Final Cut Pro 10 gives you a number of different ways to import your media. You can import directly from a supported camera or memory card. You can import a file or folder from your Mac's Finder, or you can import from a camera archive. In this lesson, we'll be exploring all three methods. Before you import any media, an important first step is to tell Final Cut Pro how you want your media organized, optimized, and analyzed. From the Final Cut Pro menu, choose Preferences. Notice the keyboard shortcut is Command-. You'll be revisiting the Preferences window throughout this tutorial, so this is a good keyboard shortcut to commit to memory. If you're a seasoned Final Cut Pro user, opening Preferences for the first time and seeing how minimalist it has become might be a bit alarming. But let me assure you, there's some seriously powerful technology behind this window. In Final Cut Pro 10, Preferences are much more about controlling how media is handled and less about how the user interface can be customized, as it was in legacy versions of Final Cut Pro. I therefore like to think of Preferences as Final Cut Pro 10's Media Command Center. As you can see at the top of the window, there are three areas of command and control: editing, playback, and import. Because this lesson specifically deals with importing your footage, click the Import button. The Import window is divided into four main sections: organizing, transcoding, video, and audio. Each of these sections performs specific functions on your media as it's importing. Let's quickly go down the list. Organizing controls where your media lives in both the Mac's Finder and Final Cut Pro's event library. By default, the Copy Files to Final Cut Events folder is checked. This means that whenever you import media from your camera or from a folder on your hard drive, Final Cut Pro copies the media into a dedicated folder on your hard drive called Final Cut Events. If you go to your Mac's desktop, then click the Movies icon in any Finder window sidebar, you'll see this folder. The event paradigm is very iMovie-like in that media is placed into a dedicated events folder that Final Cut Pro uses to manage the media based on the month and year the media was recorded. Because your media is associated with a specific date, the term event has much broader implications for viewing, managing, and archiving your projects. This will become much clearer when we begin working in Final Cut Pro's event library. If you're a legacy Final Cut Pro user, the concept of events may be completely foreign, as you're used to dealing with your media in Capture Scratch folders. In Final Cut Pro 10, your media now resides in individually named folders inside your event library. This is important to understand because all media must reside in the Events folder in order for it to be available within Final Cut Pro. For example, here's an event that I created and named Audi to contain all the footage from an Audi commercial shoot. The Audi folder is completely self-contained, which makes it easy for Final Cut Pro to manage and update. Inside this folder are a trio of folders labeled Analysis Files, Original Media, and Render Files. All media that is imported into this event is placed into the Original Media folder, and all rendered media for this event are placed into the Render Files folder. The Analysis folder is used for storing files related to analyzing your footage for camera shake, color balance, and audio problems, to name a few. You might also be wondering if you can change the drive location for the Events folder to a drive other than your Mac's internal hard drive. The short answer is yes, and there are two ways to do this, one of which we'll look at now, and the other when we get to the section on importing media. In the Preferences window, just uncheck the box labeled Copy Files to Final Cut Events folder, and Final Cut Pro will create a reference file in the Events folder that points to the media on another drive. In other words, leaving this box unchecked will leave your media files in their original location. Keep in mind, this only works for media files that already exist on your Mac's internal or external hard drives, not media files that are still on your camera's memory card. The item labeled Import Folders as Keyword Collections is a fast way to have Final Cut Pro automatically create groups of related media content in the event library. For example, if you import a folder labeled Sound Effects, Final Cut Pro will create a keyword collection with the name Sound Effects. The concept of smart collections is another huge paradigm shift from earlier versions of Final Cut Pro. In Final Cut Pro 7 or earlier, you imported folders, which then became bins in Final Cut Pro's Project tab. In Final Cut Pro 10, there are no bins, just collections of media based on how they are meta tagged. In the example I just gave, let's say that the sound effects folder you imported had 10 audio files in it. Each file during import would automatically be tagged with the keywords sound effect. Then a collection would be created to group them together. This is why they are called keyword collections. This will make perfect sense when we import folders later in the lesson. Not all digital video is created equal. Some video formats require a lot more processing horsepower and on slower Macs may result in less than stellar video playback. Video formats that Final Cut Pro has traditionally had trouble with are formats that use an intra-frame codec such as H.264. Many consumer camcorders and the wildly popular DSLR cameras use H.264 as their in-camera encoding method. Final Cut Pro will allow you to edit video files from these cameras natively, but often at the cost of performance. By selecting Create Optimized Media, Final Cut Pro will convert the camera's native file format into the high-quality Apple ProRes format. The process of converting media files from one format to another is called transcoding. Because transcoding takes time, importing footage will take much longer than if you had imported the media files natively. However, once the media is imported, you will not notice any performance lag during editing or playback. The other option, Create Proxy Media, will create low bitrate files using Apple's ProRes proxy format. You would choose this option when you wanted to keep your file size down while improving performance. This option is particularly well suited when you have many hours of footage you need to work with, but have limited storage options. Normally, these options are turned off by default, as checking them will increase the amount of time it takes to import your files. I therefore recommend that you import your media natively, then later during editing, optimizing your media in the background to improve performance. Moving down the list, let's discuss one of the most powerful features of Final Cut Pro X, an analysis algorithm that intelligently looks for problems with your video or audio as your media is being imported. With regard to video, if you place a check next to Analyze for Stabilization and Rolling Shutter, Final Cut Pro will look for camera shake or rolling shutter artifacts in your media. For those of you unfamiliar with these terms, stabilization refers to excessive camera shake, and rolling shutter refers to image skew or wobble that can occur with cameras using CMOS sensors. During import, if the analysis detects one or both of these problems, keywords are added to the clips in the media browser so you can quickly identify them. However, the problems will not be corrected until you edit the clip or clips into the timeline, then turn on stabilization and rolling shutter in the inspector. If you are analyzing for stabilization and rolling shutter, it's a good idea to have Create Smart Collections After Analysis checked. This way, you'll be able to quickly locate all the clips with the excessive shake keyword in the event library. Likewise, Analyze for Balance Color will look for video that's too blue, too red, or too green. In other words, color balance problems. The analysis also looks for problems with contrast. Final Cut Pro will not attempt to correct for these issues, only remind you the clip has been analyzed ahead of time. Once you add the clip or clips to the timeline, you can then balance the color with a single click in the inspector. I covered this in much greater detail in the lesson called Balancing and Matching Color. The next item, Find People, is simply amazing. Final Cut Pro analyzes each clip to determine if there are people in the shot, then it tags them based on whether they are one person, two persons, or a group shot. The algorithm even goes further and tags them according to their framing, so after the clip imports, you'll also see your footage tagged with words like wide shot, medium shot, and close-up. By checking the item labeled Create Smart Collections After Analysis, Final Cut Pro will then group the tagged people shots into a smart collection, so all the shots that are tagged as group shots, for example, will appear together in a smart collection labeled Group. One point of clarification before we move on. The Find People feature is not a facial recognition algorithm like you find in iPhoto or Aperture. In other words, it won't locate and tag Uncle Bill in your wedding video. It will only recognize that a person or persons is in the shot, then attempt to make keywording decisions based on whether Bill is alone, with someone else, or in a group. Sometimes when shooting on location, you end up with audio that's not loud enough, has too much background noise, or has 60-cycle hum generated from improper grounding of your audio recording gear. By checking Analyze and Fix Audio Problems, Final Cut Pro will look for these common problems. Severe problems will actually be fixed during import, while problems that the algorithm determines will need human judgment and skill to fix will be flagged. I cover how to fix these common audio problems in the lesson called Enhancing the Soundtrack. In addition, you can have Final Cut Pro detect, then separate mono and stereo audio within the clip which allows for quick reconfiguring of your output channels during editing or final delivery. Finally, if you have any silent audio channels in your imported media, Final Cut Pro will automatically detect, then remove them if this box is checked. Let me reiterate how cool these analysis features are. Think about it. Before Final Cut Pro 10, you had to open up each clip separately after import, then listen to the clip, apply a corrective filter, then adjust the filter until you were satisfied with it. With Final Cut Pro's analysis algorithm, all of this is taken care of for you automatically, so that by the time you're ready to work with a clip in your project, the problems have already been addressed. With regard to analyzing video and audio, keep in mind that the analysis happens in the background, and you'll be able to edit with your clips immediately, even on clips that are still on your camera's media card. In other words, you do not have to wait for the analysis to finish, nor do you need to wait for all the media to copy to your event library to begin editing. In the next lesson, you'll learn how to analyze your media after you import it, which gives you the flexibility of applying the analysis on a clip-by-clip basis.